Thank you very much for joining. My name is Karen Hoek. I'm the new Nutanix Business Development Manager. I'm very happy to do the introduction of our first Nutanix webinar of this year. So for every question, remark, and so on about Nutanix, I will be your contact person. And today in our first exclusive networks Friday talks, it will be about Prism Pro, and we have the Nutanix people also in the webinar, Tom van den Bos and Bart van Praat, who are the cloud architects, and they will host the webinar. At the end of the webinar, I will show you some slides, and of course, everybody, I hope everybody will have received their box with a nice beer and some nice cheeses. And the cheeses will come from Schokkaert Kaze of Mechelen, and one of the people of Schokkaert will do the beer and cheese pairing. During the webinar, you will receive a Teams invite, because a beer and cheese pairing is better when we have it in an interactive way, so everybody will have his camera and his microphone on. So during this webinar, you will receive the invite from me, the Teams invite, and after the webinar, I will kindly invite you to go to the Teams session, and we do the fun part from there. So today it's about Prism Pro, and Bart van Praat and Tom van den Bos will show you more about the nice management feature of Nutanix. Okay, guys, go ahead.
Thank you, Karen, and welcome everybody from my part. My name is Bart, and together with Tom, I will do the presentation. I think you can all see the presentation. If the view is right here, it should be okay. So we can start. Maybe some household rules. If you have questions, do not hesitate to put it in the chat panel, and we will try to answer them as soon as possible. A very good question already in the chat. When does the cheese need to be out of the fridge? Maybe yes. Someone from the cheese factory can answer that.
I will answer the question. So you have received the box, and in the box there is a paper with the instructions. So please remove the cheese already from the fridge, so it can already breathe, but leave it in the package. And just 5 minutes before the beer and cheese pairing, you can start grabbing your beer that you have also received. So I would suggest after the webinar and before going to the team session, you grab your beer, you grab your cheeses, but please remove the cheese now.
Okay, let's kick off the boring part of this session, the part about the Nutanix products. I will try to make it as interactive and as many demos as possible together with Tom. But for first, a bit setting the scene. Why do we need some intelligent operations in our modern data centers? You should be aware that Nutanix always tries to make everything as easy as possible, and we did so by eliminating everything that is complex about infrastructure. So setting up a Nutanix infrastructure is really easy. And we tell the customers that they only need to be aware and put time in the managing of the workloads themselves. And with our product Prism Central, or Prism Ops, as you will see later on in the presentation, we try to even make things even easier to manage. So instead of doing a lot of things manually, we will show you how you can do it in an automated fashion without the need to go really in depth and have coding skills. So in an easy manner, deploy some automation on top of your Nutanix environment. If we see how customers today are doing monitoring and troubleshooting, we see that it's a siloed environment We have separate tools to do the monitoring. They generate alerts. Another team needs to analyze these alerts and maybe create some changes in a change management framework, and somebody else need to act upon those alerts and change requests. So it's a slow and fragmented process, and we think we can optimize this. How will we do this? Instead of creating a flow, we try to create a triangle, and we put our known machine intelligence, our AI platform, in between. So we can not only monitor, we do the analysis of the alerts and the events that take place in the infrastructure. We put them in our AI and our machine learning system, and we try to generate intelligent alerts. And we even can go one step further and act upon these alerts in an automatic fashion that you can define. So instead of generating tons of alerts that no one is looking at anymore, we try to eliminate the noise in the alerts and only alert you about those issues that we think are real anomalies and not just one-shot things that don't really matter. So we try to create an actionable signal so you can act upon those. This we do in a seamless experience. We provide you with a single pane of glass that we already have, our Prism Central product, where we can add additional services later on. We have our Calm, our lifecycle automation platform, and our Flow platform that integrate in the Prism framework. But today we will talk about the Prism operations part, which is now licensed at Prism as Prism Pro, but we also released the Prism Central Ultimate license as well. What feature is in which version of the licensing we will cover later on in the presentation. As I already mentioned, now the product is known as Prism Central Pro, Prism Pro short. Our marketing people need to do something, I guess, and we are trying the new name Prism Ops because it covers better what the product actually does. It's a product that helps the operational part of the Nutanix environment and adds a lot of added value and intelligence to your management. And about the new features in Prism Ops, we will talk about in the presentation. Maybe one last thing for the build-up and the setting the scene is Prism Central in the past was released together with our Nutanix software, our AOS software, since already a year or so. We changed the release schedule, and now we have Prism Centrals that are completely decoupled from the versioning of our AOS product line. So you can upgrade Prism Central independently, and as you can see, the versions of Prism Central have their own supportability matrix as well. On the bottom of the slides, you have a direct link to the software interoperability matrix on our portal. With this, I give the word to Tom, who will talk about some of the Prism Ops features already.
All right, thank you, Bart. So if you can make me presenter.
Yeah.
All right, so as Bart just said, from an introduction point of view, when we look at Prism Ops, we basically try to, let's say, subdivide all the, let's say, possibilities into three main categories that we will walk you through. The very first one being everything that has to do with just-in-time, let's say, forecasting and planning. The second one, which is much more, let's say, looking at how can we intelligently monitor a Nutanix infrastructure, and not only, let's say, stop at the Nutanix infrastructure, but also look a bit further on. And a third piece is how can we then take that information and try to put some automation at work. And so the very first thing that we look at is obviously that first piece. So the just-in-time forecasting and planning. And let this be more or less what Prism Pro used to be in the past. Everything that has to do with simple forecasting, planning, what-if analysis, etc. So when we start, this is what you get to see, or a lot of you might have seen in the past from Prism Pro functionalities, these Runway features, where you get a very good understanding of how long a specific, let's say, cluster still has from a lifetime perspective with regards to storage, CPU, memory, and that acts depending on, if you, let's say, add resources, take away resources out of the cluster, it will automatically recalculate and set a new, let's say, baseline view of how many days this cluster still has from a lifetime point of view. Now, obviously, next to that, there is a whole, let's call it what-if scenario-based builder built into this as well, where you could then say, well, I would like to add or remove maybe specific VMs, resources, hosts at points in time somewhere in the future, and see what the impact would be on my current environment. So for example, as you see on the screenshot, adding on a specific point in the future, adding, for example, a SQL-based workload or some VDI-based workloads on that cluster. And even from a SQL or VDI point of view, you could benefit from the built-in, let's call it, templates of functionality that are in there. So the what-if analysis tool really knows the specific workloads and can act upon them. So when you select a SQL, you can select the type of transactions that would be going through, or when you select the VDI, it will ask you whether it would be maybe a Citrix implementation, or a VMware Horizon implementation, etc. So asking behind the load of these desktops, so that the let's say simulations can be as accurate as possible given the numbers that you put in. And then obviously you get some trend lines on how that, let's say, would change the way your system will behave. You can ask for some recommendations of what systems you might need to add with specific specs in the near future. So this is functionality that has been in there for quite a long time, let's say, combined with reporting. Reporting, where there's a number of reports already built in, but you can create your own custom reports, basically using all the, let's say, widgets which are available within Prism Central, and use them within those reports. So getting, let's say, scenarios like cluster efficiency or detailed cluster growth scenarios that you can then use either as PDF or even use as CSV exports, have them scheduled on specific intervals, etc. So that, let's say, used to be, for a lot of functionality, what Prism Pro was. So what has changed in the last couple of, let's say, years? Let's look at that. And number two being that intelligent monitoring piece. And when we say intelligent monitoring, we typically look at a number of these things. How can we reduce alert storms? How can we right-size VMs? How can we better troubleshoot? And how can we even, and Bart will go more into depth into that, look at even non-Nutanix environments. And so the start of this all is basically our, let's say, purpose-built XFIT machine. Okay, XFIT is a in-house, fully developed, let's say, artificial intelligence module, let's call it like that, that tries to look at behavior and behavior analysis of individual VMs and their metrics and what they are doing. And so what you'll see is that the system will start to learn and understand what days or hours a system is active or inactive, and as you'll see, change its trend line of expectancies, what might happen within the environment. And obviously, based on that, then starts to self-learn further on and predict on what is going to happen somewhere in the future, so that you're not setting out alerts when it is not necessary. So when we take that information, we can then look at further anomaly detection and say, well, okay, we can look at which machines might be over-provisioned, where you have given them too much from a CPU or memory perspective, or other machines which might be constrained from a resource point of view. We could detect bully VMs where, let's say, that one VM is putting, let's say, based on his performance or the way he is acting, has an impact on other virtual machines so that they can't get enough resources. So it's all that XFIT behavior analysis that is happening in the background, where you can then act upon. And I'll try to show you that later on, where that sits within Prism Central. So obviously, when you look at metrics, you can then drill down further on and start to customize even your let's say, alert warnings. Instead of, let's say, leaving the defaults in, you could individually look at VMs or specific entities and then look at, well, okay, I would like to monitor this specific, let's say, value out of that specific entity, let's call it like that, and even put in some, let's say, behavior warnings or static thresholds if you really want to know when a specific, let's say, action or value is being met, so that at least you know exactly when something is happening at which specific point in time. And the last piece, which we've been, let's say, enhancing from a, let's say, visibility, manageability, and troubleshooting point of view, is something which was called the analysis page. And so the analysis page, again, existed for some time, and it's a page that you might have used without really knowing, but where you could aggregate metrics of the system. So where you could put in, or where you see the alerts and events that have happened over time, and where you could then say, well, I would like to add, for example, the cluster IO onto the graph, and I would like to add the CPU onto the graph. And so you could find, or try to find, some correlations at a specific point in time on this analysis page. And so while that existed for some time, what we have done now is we've introduced something which we called sessions into this piece. And with a session, you can basically keep specific, let's say, graphs for a specific VM or a specific entity for a longer period of time without the need to change them. Because if you want to do specific troubleshooting, you have the risk in the old world that you need to, let's say, delete all graphs, add again the necessary graphs that you want to see, and start over if you want to do it in a total different troubleshooting. While with the sessions piece, you could basically try to create some kind of troubleshooting dashboards if you want. I'll try to show you later on, where for, again, a specific entity, a VM or a host, all these graphs, you can keep on seeing them and switch between sessions where you would want to. And again, there, export data where you would want to. So let's maybe directly take a look at how a number of these things look like before we go further. So if all goes well, you should be able to see my Prism Central instance now. Bart, can you just confirm?
Yep, we can.
All right, perfect. So this is a typical Prism Central instance where there's a number of clusters being monitored. And as you see, we have this efficiency widget on the screen where a number of VMs has been over provisioned, a number of them are inactive. There's a couple of them which are constrained. And with a simple click, I could dive into and get directly a filtered list of which VMs we're talking about, which are under or over provisioned, what metrics they are being looked at, and why the case that they are over provisioned, etc. So that could be one thing which we could do. Obviously, then we talked about this capacity planning piece, which goes into the operations side, where you can then go to the planning. But so for now, let's take a little bit of a different look and try to go and take a look at one VM specifically. So we have one specific VM which is in there. So I could go into the metrics of this single VM, where I'm presented then with everything which is happening from a, let's say, CPU memory point of view of this VM. And we directly see where XFIT is happening. But now let's switch our timeline, instead of the last 24 hours, I believe, to last week. So let him quickly recalculate. And you'll directly see what the impact is of what is happening. So as you see in the past, last week, we had some scheduled tasks running, where from the moment that these scheduled tasks stopped, we tended to see a drop in what is happening from a CPU perspective. But again, you can see the same kind of behavior where the, let's say, learning path is happening in the background, and we're changing the way we think about what is going to happen and the kind of actions that we see. Next to this, I can enable my alerting as well on this metrics view. And depending on the kind of alerts that I might have enabled, I can even see when my cluster is starting to alert me on specific behavior from a controller point of view, or from a storage bandwidth or snapshotting usage point of view, or working set point of view. So all alerts and metrics which are in the system, again, can be seen here. But now we're drilled down into this one specific VM. Once I take the actions menu here, I could then say, well, send me this specific metric to my analysis dashboard, or select my specific analysis session. All right. And so where do we see this? Well, when I go into my operations view, I can go to analysis. And so this is where you now see these analysis sessions coming to life, where we're looking at the past day, but I could say, well, let's maybe look at the past 1 month or past 1 week. What you typically then start to see, well, I can look at correlation of events, what has happened in my cluster from an alert point of view, the actual loads onto the cluster, and maybe even related metrics towards them. But now only focusing on this specific VM from a SQL point of view. I could switch my session to a more, let's say, broad analysis session, where I can then have totally different views related to maybe cluster, write IOPS, from a CPU memory perspective, etc. But so this way allows me, instead of, let's say, taking away these metrics over and adding the SQL ones over and over again, if I want to drill down into specific troubleshooting, I can now easily switch between dashboards or multiple sessions from a troubleshooting point of view. So I hope this already gives you some, let's say, idea on what has changed on that front. So let's maybe then dive a little bit further. What are some other things we look at? And one of those things that you might expect somewhere in the near future, because this is still something in roadmap under actual development, is something like visual monitoring, where you will be able to monitor your clusters and your entities related to them on a much more visual graph, where you see, well, on a cluster, there's maybe a number of nodes. Under a node, there's multiple VMs. You might have some maybe application visibility even into them. And so it becomes really easy to then, when there is a specific alert, to see what kind of, let's say, VMs or applications might be even impacted by that specific alert. In the beta scenarios, we had a customer which was testing this feature. We had a giant network outage, and we was basically, because of this functionality, it was fairly easy able to distinguish which nodes or which clusters were specifically impacted by that network outage. So that's one thing where this, let's say, visual monitoring can become a huge benefit in the future. Next to that, another thing which we recently, let's say, enhanced or released within Prism Pro or Prism Operations is something which we call application discovery. And at the point, that is something that is only applicable for those customers using vSphere on Nutanix. Support for AHV is something that is on the roadmap, but this will allow you to, let's say, gain insights into the application piece. Okay, so start to learn what applications are running inside specific machines. So this might be really helpful if you need to take over an environment which you don't know, or you would like to learn more from a security point of view about what applications are running inside a specific VM. But how does this look like, or how does this work? Well, basically, the way we look at this is we look at this from a policy perspective. So you define a policy per, for example, application. As you'll see here, there's a number of examples on screen where we say, well, this application is called DNS. it is active on TCP port 53, for example, and let's look at all VMs. The status of this policy is enabled. And you can see the rest of the policies being in there, like an Oracle DB, on what ports they are active, or a SQL Server, on what ports we should look at, etc. So once we have the policies defined, and they come basically out of the box, okay, so you can define your own policies maybe even later on, but there's a whole number of policies predefined. We can then look at discovering the applications, and discovering is nothing more than just say, well, I would like to run discover, and we will touch the policies onto the VMs that we have running. And obviously then there's a list of, let's say, identified and unidentified VMs which come out of them. And so what you'll see in this example is a number of, let's say, VMs have been identified as being, well, you are running the SQL application. Different VMs are being identified as running, for example, MariaDB, and others might have been identified as our NTP service, while a whole lot of other VMs just were still unidentified, being, well, there was not a single policy which could have been applied to these VMs because, for example, there were non-matching ports here. But at least it gives us a good learning and an experience onto what we can expect from which applications are running in which VMs. So Bart, I think it's now time for you to tell a little bit more on this, let's say, non-AOS monitoring piece.
Yeah, correct. If you can give me the presenter view again.
Yes, I'll switch. There you go.
Okay. And now you should see my screen again. And indeed, let's talk about one of the new features that we included in Prism Central. And this is especially for customers who have not only a Nutanix environments running, but next to the Nutanix environment, for example, an existing VMware environment. This can be a traditional 3-tier environment running VMware, a legacy solution, as we like to call it, of course. It's a great upsell opportunity for you guys to migrate all those workloads to the Nutanix platform. But on the other hand, we can assist the customers in creating a single pane of glass, not only for the workloads running on Nutanix, but also for these more legacy workloads running still on a 3-tier environment on vCenter. So we allow Prism Pro, Prism Ops to connect to your existing vSphere environment, and you get all the nice things Tom talked about the XFIT self-learning algorithm, the alerting, the analysis page, the trending and stuff. You get all the same for non-Nutanix workloads, and you get your single pane of glass once again. I can't demo this feature live because I don't have an available. Oh, 1 second. I don't have a 3-tier environment running anymore, but let's see. I've created a small video to demo how you can configure it. So let's run the video. It doesn't take that long. I try to eliminate as much as possible. So we go to operations and integrations, and in the integration part, we can just configure external monitoring, which we're going to do here. So configure, and we chose vCenter. I will talk about SQL Server as well in a second, that we can demo live. But for now, let's do the vCenter integration. Just enter the vCenter credentials, test the connection, and then we can select which clusters from within vCenter we like to monitor in Prism Central. We can select all the clusters, or we can select those clusters that are relevant to monitor. So just select vSphere clusters that we like to monitor, just like that, and just press save, and then we get the inventory loaded into Prism, and from there on we have basically the same functionality as with normal VMs. So if we go to our virtual machines in Prism, we now have non-Nutanix and non-Nutanix VMs, as you can see in the screen. And even for the non-Nutanix VMs, we have all the performance metrics. We can define alerts, thresholds, and act upon these alerts as well. So from there on out, it's basically the same behavior as you can expect from a VM running on Nutanix. We can see the OS, we can see the configuration, see what host it's running on. And as you can see here, the same XFIT algorithm is working also for these external virtual machines. We can define alerts here, both static alerts or alerts based on our intelligent thresholds. We can add the statistics to the analysis page as well. So all the same functionality that you can expect is right there. So also the hardware can be monitored. We can take a look at the different hosts in your ESX environment and do all the same with it. Another new thing we added, also hinted at it during the presentation, is we can add SQL Server to the monitoring as well. We get full visibility inside your SQL Server, act upon SQL specific alerts, and do also the custom the machine learning. Let me go to the demo now. And before I start with the SQL part, I'm gonna already start a small bit of the demo for the next part of the presentation because it takes a while for it to start working. I've here created a virtual machine running a simple Windows, and the bad coder I created a script that will consume all the memory on this virtual machine. And later on in the presentation, we will see how we can automatically respond to certain events. Let me first log into the machine. There we go. I've created a small script in PowerShell, and let's kick off the script. There we go, and let me show you what the script is actually doing. Let's go to the performance. Do note that this virtual machine now has 2 gigs of memory, and you see my script started running and all the memory starts to get consumed. We'll get back to this VM later on in the presentation, but let's first go back to our integrations and take a look at what we can do for SQL Server. So here you can see I've added a SQL Server to my Prism view, and right away you notice I can detect which version of SQL Server we are running, how many databases are active on this SQL Server, what type of SQL Server is it. This is a standalone, but it could also be an always-on cluster, for example, which host, and we see some metrics right here. And we can drill down deeper into our SQL Server. We get a view of the databases that are running with the name. If we were on an availability group in an always-on cluster, we would see where this database is running. We see the IOPS that are running and how much space is available for the database or for the log files. And when we drill even deeper, we get performance statistics specific to this database. So this is already quite impressive, but we can even drill down deeper and we get a view into all the queries that are ran on this SQL Server. And we can see how many times these queries are executed, how long is the execution taking, when was the last time this was executed, and we can actually get a look at the entire SQL statement as well. We can copy it over for analysis or to run it somewhere else. And also in our metrics tab, we see now that we don't only have statistics around the virtual machine, but we get SQL specific statistics here in our view as well. And just the same as with all our other statistics, we can add them to the analysis page for easy troubleshooting or for creating a performance dashboard for your application owners, for example. So as you can see, log wait time, the amount of connections on your database, checkpoint page rates, recompilation rates, really active connections on your entire server, in-depth statistics around SQL Server. So let's go back to the presentation. And the next part in the presentation we would like to talk about is the automatic response towards alerts and adding the functionality, added new functionality to Prism Pro actually as well. So this we do with our Xplay functionality. What is Xplay? It's an if something, then do something else. If something happens, or if you click on something, or if it's the first Monday of the month, then we will do something. So it's an easy and visual way to create automation. But instead of doing the slides, let me show you this on top of the environment. So it's under operations playbooks. I've added it here as well for easy going back and forward. And as you can see, I created a few playbooks. One of the simplest playbooks is the playbook that messages every time a new virtual machine is created. So as you can see here, it's based on an event, and the event, if the event create VM happens, there need to be some actions done. And the only thing we do here is send an email or send something into the Slack channel. Oops. Move around the dialog from the presentation, then I can click everywhere. So if you create a playbook, it's really easy. You need to select a trigger. The trigger I used in the example was an event trigger. It can be an alert as well. It can be a manual trigger, time-based, or you can integrate it with another solution and just initiate a playbook via a REST API call, via a webhook. So the example new VM I explained, it's really easy, but something more advanced is every time a new virtual machine is created, I like to assign a default category to the VM. This was actually a playbook I created for one of the customers I'm responsible for. They wanted every newly VM that was created to be assigned a policy for backup, a protection policy. And protection policy can be set based upon a category. So now every time a newly created VM event happens, we automatically assign a category. Assigning a category isn't a function that was readily available inside Xplay, so I created my own by just using the variable of the UUID of the newly created VM. I put it into a REST API call towards Prism Central. So I get all the information about my VM back. I add the category to it, and I do a put of the information so the VM is updated. So how does this look like? Let's just create a virtual machine. You can select any cluster, doesn't matter. Let's give the VM a name. Let's give it a CPU, let's give it some memory, doesn't really matter. We just need a new VM. It's created, as you can see here. And if we take a look first at the Slack channel, you will already see in my Slack channel that we get a message, dummy BVP dummy VM has been created, and we get the troubleshooting feedback that I put in my auto category event as well. So if we go back to Prism Central and to our playbooks, We have also an automatic auditing of what events are triggered, and you can see the new VM alert has been triggered and the auto category VM has also been triggered. And if we now take a look at the categories and take a look at the category I selected, the bronze category, we will see that we have now 2 VMs that are assigned this category. And because these VMs are in this category, you will see they will get automatic policies. And one of the policies is the protection policy bronze. So if we go to the VMs, you can see both my dummy 01 as the one I'm using for the memory test is in here. And if you go to the protection policies, you will see if we go to bronze, once the replication is finished, we will see our new VM here as well. So it gets automatically assigned and it will get automatically backed up in the manner I specified in this protection domain. Another feature of the playbooks is the playbooks based on an alert, and I created an alert for the memory. So every time a memory alert is generated for this set of VMs, I report into Slack. I use Slack just for debugging purposes. I create a VM snapshot and I hot add 1 gig of memory up to a maximum amount of 5 gigs of memory for this VM, and I resolve the alert and I update via email and Slack that this is happening. So let's take a look if it's already triggered. No, not yet. So we need to be a little bit more patient because it doesn't automatically trigger. It takes around 10 minutes before the alert get actually triggered. So we need a little bit of patience here. So let's get back to Prism. Another possibility that I already mentioned, you can enhance Prism with functionality that isn't there yet. One of these examples is put a host into maintenance mode, for example. For Acropolis Hypervisor, it isn't in the GUI just yet. So for another customer, I created a custom playbook, a manual one, that is available on all hosts. And the only thing I do is I open an IP SSH session and I execute the command to put a host into maintenance mode. And as a parameter, I get the UUID of the host selected in my interface. This is a shared demo environment, so I won't put a host into maintenance mode. I also created the dummy enter maintenance mode, same script, but instead of the command to put a host into maintenance mode, I just do an ls command getting the files, a list of the files. So how does this look? If I go to my hardware, my hosts, I can select a host, and now under actions we get the option run playbook, and all the playbooks that are defined on a host level, as you saw earlier, are available here, and I can select run. And now we automatically run the ls command on this host, and the output is once again put into our Slack channel. So that already gives you some ideas of how powerful these X-Play things can be. It's really easy to set up. Just this morning, I was talking to a customer and he wanted to get an alert every time one of his employees did a resize of a virtual machine disk, because they ran out of storage and they didn't know where that storage went to, because their administrators were on the fly resizing the disk of the virtual machine. So real easy, based upon an event resize of a disk, I generate an alert in Slack, or I put something in a database or in a CSV file or stuff like that. It's really easy to enhance your Prism experience. Another example for help desk purposes, for example, is generate also manual alerts, but for example on a per VM level. So a manual and on a VM level, and allow or to fire off, for example, a PowerShell on this VM, automatically we can take care of the credentials. We don't have to pass all the credentials for every VM to our help desk, and we can allow them to fire off certain scripts they need to solve issues or to react. The same you can provide this to developers, for example, where they can automatically clone the latest version of the production database by integrating it in one of these playbooks. And while we were talking, we see that the increased memory alert did run. We got an alert in Slack as well that there was an issue on this virtual machine and that we added memory to this virtual machine. And if we take a look to the virtual machine, we see that we have now 3 gigs of memory available. So this script automatically added a memory, 1 gig of memory to this virtual machine without me interfering in any way. You saw this limit that I put here. We can also go one step further, and instead of generating putting a limit, a hard limit there, we can use autopilot. This is something we added in the latest version, and instead of responding to a certain alert and waiting for the alert to happen again and then add that extra gig of memory, we can use KPIs as well, and we can define a KPI for in this case memory, and we tell the KPI our memory usage must be under 70% all the time, otherwise fire off the script. And of course we can set safety measures here as well, that we don't keep on adding software, because the script I actually wrote keeps on utilizing all the memory you give it. So we also have a max number, but instead of doing it very statically, 1 gig each time, we can do it in a dynamic manner and use these KPIs as an even more intelligent way of handling these alerts. So that was more or less the things I like to show about the playbooks. Let me see. Yeah, we talked about these. We talked about the examples. So the playbooks plus the autopilot feature really gives you the proactive remediation towards alert without manual intervention. With this, I hand over the presenter view to Tom once again, and he will talk to you about cost management and the license features. Tom, go ahead.
All right, so you should have visibility now.
Yeah, we do.
All right, so costing. And costing is something which, again, from a Nutanix point of view, we have had some time in portfolio after I think it was last year or almost even 2 years ago, we acquired a company and where we, let's say, had a service which we called Beam. And Beam was a product which focused really on this costing aspect from a public cloud perspective. So when people were using public cloud from an AWS or from an Azure point of view, how much were they spending into, let's say, which services were they spending? What was the cost of a, let's say, specific instance? Where could they save on from a money perspective, let's say switching to reserved instances, etc., etc. And so what we've done is we've taken that idea from this, let's say, cloud-based service, and we've brought that back into, let's say, more from an on-prem model, or at least an understanding of the on-prem model. So Beam still is a cloud service, but this gives the ability to, let's say, understand on-prem Nutanix clusters, where you will get the idea of visibility on what a specific VM would cost based on, for example, capacity that you have, let's say, enabled from a vCPU or memory perspective. But it doesn't stop there. You can add, let's say, traditional, maybe even license costs or manageability costs, cluster acquisition costs, etc. So you can really create a full, let's say, TCO framework over all the VMs that a customer is running onto his infrastructure. And obviously, it's not only a costing point of view. You could look at this as a, let's say, chargeback or showback model as well, where you could then say, well, okay, a specific maybe BU is spending X, or something like this, where you have a pre-built cost center and have some detailed reportings built in, have some, let's say, monthly schedule with email reporting. But also from a budgeting point of view, where you could set up, well, okay, a specific BU has a specific budget, so how are they trending against that budget from a VM creation, etc. point. So it's the Beam functionality, but let's say better focused on this on-prem world that we're offering through this. So with all due, let's bring all this together into, so what additions are we really talking about? Okay, so when we talk about Prism, what are we talking about now from a Prism Pro perspective? And so again, let's say finish and look at, first piece is the infra management piece. If you're really there from a just simple infra management point of view, you get Prism Central or Prism Starter if you want, at no additional cost with AOS. Okay, so you have Prism Central from a starter point of view, which is basically just doing basic infra management. And then comes the license tiers, which is what we now know as Prism Pro or Prism Ultimate. And so both Prism Pro and Ultimate really focus on that operations piece, about everything that we talked about. So this capacity management, the automation piece, the XFeed algorithm, application visibility, discovery, etc. So if you look at, let's say, a deep dive graph, and I don't want to go over every specific, let's say, functionality here on what is in each edition, but the easiest summary basically is that Pro has everything that we talked about, with the exception of the SQL monitoring and the costing functionality that we discussed as the last point. So the Beam functionality and the specific SQL monitoring, so the application monitoring piece, that is in Ultimate. All the rest is Pro functionality. All right. So from a journey perspective, how could customers look at this, and how could you maybe even position this towards customers? Well, obviously, everything needs to start with, let's say, the basics. So looking at the simple intelligent operations, maybe some proactive learning, position the XFeed algorithm and the monitor behind this, so how they can, let's say, have better visibility on behavior of their applications. Then take maybe the next steps toward that's I would say smart automation, simple automation. There could even some let's say small XPlay steps already or playbooks being there. And then further on, go to real service observability with what Bart showed with Autopilot, I think, where KPIs really come into play, and then really take that bridge to a fully autonomous IT operations point of view, looking at a almost self-tuning performance vehicle. So as a summary, I think what is really important, really start, let's say, start positioning Prism Central as the day-to-day management interface at customers. They have it already with Prism Starter. They can start to make use of this functionality from Pro and Ultimate for 90 days. If they turn on, let's say, the functionality, they can explore what it may mean for them. Do note that you need to disable the functionality after 90 days. Otherwise, you start to get that red neckwear on top because you don't have a license, so you're using some functionalities. So that is something important. But customers can start using, can start testing it. if they really want to know more, or you want to learn more about some very specific, let's say, features, there's a lot of deep dive content available. You get the link here, and so yeah, later on you'll see it later on, but you might be able to visit this website, take a look at some of the videos so you can learn something more. And last but not least, I think either for yourself or at customers, position Nutanix Test Drive. Okay, for those of you that have never heard of it, it is basically the ability to give a fully functional environment to a customer or to yourself from a training point of view or from an exploration point of view, where you can simply say, well, I would like to learn something more about data management, about this operations piece, about, let's say, even maybe Nutanix Flow from a security point of view, or Era from a database perspective. But by just point and click, leaving your email address, you get a 4-hour demo environment directly for use. So within 5 minutes, you're up and running, active within Prism Central, and you can start to explore. Okay, the whole environment is set up so that you get some, and a customer even gets some, let's say, step-by-step explanations of what is happening or what you can click on. So a really guided tour, but you're not bound by the guided tour. You can freely move around where you want and where possible. So really something to take a look at and to, I would say, use as a leave behind at customers. Certainly those who are, let's say, unfamiliar with Nutanix, where you can easily say, well, go test and see for yourself how all of this works. So with that, I'll give the word back to Karen, who will, let's say, give a couple of more minutes on a couple of, let's say, announcements from Exclusive themselves. Karen, up to you.
Yes, thank you, Tom, and thank you, Bart, for the interesting insight into Prism Central. I hope this was very interesting for the people on the call. And just before we start the fun part, I want to conclude with a couple of slides. Most of you might have heard about Exclusive on Demand, and I know some of you already have access to the platform, which is our subscription-based platform where we can transform the vendors' offerings, the 1, the 3, the 5 years offering, into a monthly, quarterly, or annual subscription. And I can announce that Nutanix will soon be available on Exclusive on Demand. Unfortunately, I don't have a date yet, but hopefully we can announce it before the summer, and then some or maybe all of the products of Nutanix will be available. So as soon as I have an update, we will also communicate about that, and we will also organize webinars and so on. But if you already have some questions about Exclusive on Demand, do not hesitate to contact me.